Welcome to the Winning with Shopify podcast. This is the podcast to help you scale your Shopify store into a money-making machine. The Winning with Shopify podcast is powered by Spec, who is the sponsor for this series. We will be teaching you how to get the most out of Google through SEO and PPC through this series. Get ready to take notes. Now, over to the studio.
Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Winning with Shopify podcast. For anyone's not tuned in before, welcome to the show. My name's Nick, and today is very special, and you're in for a real treat, which I'm saying very sarcastically. It's just me today. We normally have guests on the show. So if it's your first time tuning in, today's gonna be a little bit different, so make sure you go back and check out some other guests from previous episodes. Today, I put a little post out on LinkedIn. Some of you will be watching this because you've seen my post on LinkedIn. It got a little bit more traction than I normally get on LinkedIn, and today I'm gonna be talking about GA4. So we just finished an episode with my team from Spec that didn't they do a great job? It's been so good to have those guys on. We've had more responses to those episodes than we've ever had to any episodes before. And we've been talking about PPC in terms of launching Google shopping campaigns and trying to put money into the Google advertising system and make more revenue back. And that was the first 2 weeks. So I had my colleagues Johnny and then Daisy on there as well. And then the second 2 weeks, we also had Emily on week 3 talking about SEO. And getting some of the basics and fundamentals right, but also sharing some experience on how to do that. And then week 4, we had my other colleague, Rob, from our SEO team. And Rob and I were talking about some of the more advanced things that if you feel like you've done SEO, what else can I be doing to really improve rankings when I've done all the basic stuff? So this week is week 5 of June, which caught us a little bit by surprise. And I had a quick chat with the team and said, look, what's the biggest topic right now? And all of them, almost in a chorus, said to me, it's GA4, Nick. We need to talk about GA4. So here I am today talking about GA4. I've got 2 lists in front of me that we're going to go through, and I'm going to talk about and give some clarity on a few things and give my opinion on a few things as well. So this, I'm going to try not to get too political for or against Google on this as well. And anyone that's been playing with GA4 knows exactly what I mean by that. I'm going to focus on just the black and white facts, what it can do, what it can't do. But I'm sure there'll be some political comments that I'll put in there as well, where Google has completely screwed us over. So there is your first political comment about Google. So we're talking about GA4. So if you are watching this on the day this episode goes out, it is the 30th of June, 2023, today, and GA4 is now the only Google Analytics tracking platform available. Yes, Universal Analytics is in the bin. If that is a shock to you, where on earth have you been? You must have been living in a cave and paying no attention whatsoever to all the news bulletins, and you've obviously not been in analytics. It's been a massive banner for the last, I think, 2 or 3 months. We've had this big countdown going on as well, and a big red banner going, you need GA4. So Universal has turned off. So GA4 has come along, and GA4, of course, it's new, it's better, it works perfectly. Only one of those things is true. Yes, it is new. So I'm going to go through my list first. I have 10, there's probably going to be some tangent points as well as I go into these, but I've got at least 10 points actually talking about some of the frustrations and things that GA4 can't do. And where I can, I'm going to give you a bit of a solution to it as well, or what you should actually be doing, or what you should be comparing it to, and how to work around those things. So let's talk about the things it can't do and the things it doesn't do, and then I've got a few points at the end. I'll be honest, my list of things it's really good at is shorter than the list of things it's not. And part of that is knowledge. I and everybody else in the industry right now, we are all having a bit of a head scratch on pretty much everything we're trying to get out of GA4 and the reports we're trying to write. So my conclusion at the end, to jump to that quickly, is we're all in the same boat. Everybody's facing this issue. So if you're getting confused and stressed by it, please don't be. And actually, that does raise a bit of an opportunity to say if you're the first one in your space and none of your competitors are using GA4 properly and feeding audience data into Google Ads and all that sort of stuff, you can get ahead here and get some real get a real advancement on this, because after today, and if you're watching this not on the Friday, the 30th of June when it was posted, if you're watching this afterwards, it's already gone and there's going to be havoc on Monday morning. I'm sure there is. I have a completely empty diary ready for questions and concerns that I know are going to come in from clients and potentially for staff as well. And people trying to work out what's going on. So what's bad about it then? So the first thing is the figures don't add up. There we go. I've said it. The figures don't add up. So when we compare, and you can do this test yourself, if you've got Universal Analytics running, and you've obviously got Shopify, I hope, otherwise, you're looking at Shopify, but most of you listening to this will be using Shopify. If you compare the figures from Universal Analytics and from Shopify, they won't add up to the GA4 figures. On top of that, say you're doing something like, and I'll tell you how much they don't add up in a sec, but if you're doing something like Google advertising and you use the Google Ads conversion tracking, so you bypass Universal and GA4, Universal's in the bin, but GA4, you bypass the analytics way of doing things, and you've set up the conversion tag on Google Ads yourself, that'll be reading higher than GA4. And the other thing as well is the total revenue. So if you look at the revenue in GA4 and compare that to Universal, it tends to be somewhere between 20 to 25% lower than than Universal Analytics. And that's a concern then, especially for us marketeers and those of us trying to run a business here, is we need all the data to make all the decisions that we need to make on a regular basis. So that is a real challenge and something to take into account. So compare UA and Shopify to what GA4 is telling you. Now, one of the reasons this might be happening actually is GA4 is supposed to be smart. I say supposed to be. I think it will get there. I think it will be a really good tool long term, and I think we'll all learn to love it, and we're going to have to adapt to the way we're reporting and the way we're reading data and the way we're managing things like smart campaigns and retargeting and that kind of thing. I think we are going to get there, but GA4 at the moment, it might be removing something like your tax, or we call it VAT in the UK. So it might be removing that 20, 30% tax, whatever the tax rates are, in your given territory. So that's something to look at as well. So if you look on Shopify and work out, okay, is that figure with or without my value-added tax or my tax on my products, that might give you the answer. And if it is doing that, that might be the way you've set it up. It might also be the way that your or whatever Shopify app you're using to feed the GA4, which I'll come to in a minute. We'll come to later in the episode, not in a minute. So yeah, the figures don't add up. So take it with a pinch of salt. Which I know is extremely difficult because we're all sitting here trying to make money and trying to optimize. So if it's telling me one thing, I need to do something with that. So yeah, take it with a pinch of salt and have a look at what the other channels is telling you. And you might actually just end up with a conclusion like some of our clients who have just gone, we know it's 20% lower, so just add 20%. That's it. Or actually, if we can get everything profitable on GA4, we know we're more profitable in the real world, which is good. Why that data is missing, Google cannot tell us. We've had a conversation with them on many, many occasions. We use their live chat and their phone call facility quite a lot. We also have we're a premium agency partner globally, and we talk to the analytics teams, and they don't know. They don't have a solution for that. Whenever you raise it, they want to look at how the tags are set up and how it's tracking. But if you're using what I'll talk about in a minute, which is the app, then it can't be wrong. So yeah, there is a serious problem in there. A lot of you guys will look at what's called the source/medium report. So that will tell you things like, okay, the source might be Google or Facebook, and the medium might be like PPC or organic or CPC, it says on Google. Those don't work properly. So one of the things GA4 is trying to do is use a bit more like smart AI tech to assign customers to the correct channels that they've used. Now, I've never done an episode on attribution, just out and out attribution. We are going to do it one day. I keep threatening it. I've been threatening it for over a year now that we're going to do an episode. And the reason I'm saying it's a threat is I think it's going to confuse everybody, potentially myself and whatever guests I've got on as well. Attribution is an absolute minefield. And what we mean by attribution, if no one's come across that term before, you're new to marketing, attribution is where you attribute the sale amount. So customer spends £200. How are you going to attribute that amongst your channels? And the reason I say amongst your channels is, are you going to be attributing that through to, okay, they clicked on a Google ad the day they purchased, so that's called last click attribution, but they might have clicked on a Facebook ad 10 times before clicking on a Google ad. Or what more commonly happens with a more expensive product is things like Facebook, Google, Pinterest, all the advertising platforms. I don't know why I added Pinterest, it's quite a small one, but Bing is a better example. All the advertising platforms will be sending traffic into site. And if it's a more expensive item, say you're buying, I don't know, a new sofa for your house, or you're buying, or something big like a car, for example, when you actually go to make your inquiry or your purchase, or you're at that point now, like, okay, now I'm going to convert as far as the website's convert from just a visitor on the site to actually, you've got my information now, or I've purchased the product, which is obviously even better. So when you get to that point, if I've clicked on a Google ad or different advertising platforms 20 times, and then at the point of that, I just go, well, I know where I'm going. So you just type in, joeblogs.com to go on Joe Blogs t-shirt shop, and then you buy there, it will say direct. So the problem then with attribution is if you're not attributing the revenue to the advertising platforms, you turn those off because you think they're not working. And now all your other channels that like direct or people searching your brand name on Google, all of that plummets as well. So attribution is an absolute minefield. A lot of my guests I've had on over the years as well have said that, excuse me, they've said that actually with attribution, what they wouldn't do is they wouldn't look at each channel purely in isolation. They would try and get each channel to, okay, tracked. So where the system has gone, I know this was Google doing the work. So, a Google advert or SEO or something doing the work, or email, I know that was doing the work, so I attribute the revenue there. If we can break even on that, then all the direct brand stuff that's like, who we are and you've come to buy from us, but we don't know how you found us previously. And we don't really know if you're a new or existing customer as well, so we don't know what's going on. That is all just extra. So a lot of brands do that. Also, a lot of brands make a loss running things like Google advertising, Facebook advertising. They'll spend loads of money on it, make a loss because they might have something like a subscription. So they know people on average stay with us for 9 months and they order monthly on a subscription basis. So whatever they spend in their first conversion with us, we know it's times by 9. so we're going to make more money, or it might be repeat orders, that kind of thing. But yeah, the source and medium channels in Google Analytics 4, in GA4, don't work very well at all. And the weirdest thing is if you look at those and then you switch the report back to default channel grouping, which is where, so we used to have that on Universal Analytics as well. It's where GA4 goes, I know what all of this is, and puts it into like sort of 10 to 12 very simple channels that just say like, this is paid search, this is organic search, direct, email, etc. Whereas these, if you've got 3 different email tools, so Shopify's doing your abandoned basket, and you've got Klaviyo or .digital or something running your actual marketing emails that you're sending out, like newsletters and stuff. They will all just go into email on the default channel grouping, and on the source and medium, they're broken down into the separate channels, because one would say .digital, one would say Klaviyo, one would say Shopify. So, but those reports don't add up. If you compare Google/CPC on that report compared to paid search, and it's also called cross-network, which is where Performance Max campaigns go on GA4. If you compare the source and medium for Google/CPC, compare that to what cross-network and paid search are adding up to, they never add up. Like, not even close. Like, I've seen them where it's double on one side or double on the other. So, yeah, again, it makes people like myself question the data to go, I don't even know if this data is accurate anymore. And that is a real concern that I and a lot of marketing people have. Unfortunately, though, moaning aside, there's nothing we can do about it. You know, there are other advertising tools out there on the market. Quite a few have reached out to us recently, so we are assessing which ones we want to bring onto the show and potentially get some of those guys on. But you have to pay for all of those. Whereas the whole thing about Universal Analytics with Google was we're all spending loads of money on Google Ads. Google is giving us a really good tracking tool, which justifies the money we're putting in the first place. And that's how it should work. Whereas if it's not working, you still have to put all the money in for Google advertising, knowing that that's driving a lot of the sales of your business, but you're not getting the data to support what is working and what's not. So talking about attribution then, just on one other topic, and this is my third point on here. So source and medium doesn't work, but point number 3 is looking at things like attribution. You can change the attribution. There's a section in GA4 called model comparison, and you can do a model comparison to see what the comparison is between, like, if you attribute everything to first click. First time they clicked on our site, where did they come from? The problem with first click is things like cookies. People wipe their browsers. I might see something nice on the internet this afternoon. I go home and tell my wife. She then goes and clicks on a Google ad as well onto their website. And then when we actually purchase it, we go on a different machine. And let's just go really extravagant and say, actually, we're at one of our family's houses using their iMac in the study. They're not going to connect that iMac to the 2 clicks my wife and I did previously. And on the iMac, we're just going to search the brand on Google and click on the SEO listings. It's not PPC anymore, it's SEO. But so that's first click, where it would attribute all of it to PPC, which sounds great, doesn't it? Except for when the cookie breaks. So when that cookie journey breaks and they've come through PPC as the last step, but actually it's social that's driven them all the way. It was just that they Googled the brand advert came up and they clicked on the advert, it looks like PPC. So that's first click, where that would attribute it back to Facebook. If you do last click, it would attribute all of that to PPC and miss out the whole Facebook journey. Which is just, so you see the headache we're starting to get with the attribution models. So what do you do? I mean, customers are going to click on multiple places, and we need some sort of dashboard to show us how much of that is happening to justify how much we should be investing in the advertising platforms and how much more we should be pushing things like email, like social, affiliate marketing, SEO, and all other similar channels to that. So the solution that Google have come up with, which is quite interesting, is called data-driven attribution. So what they do is they say, if you've clicked 3 times on Google Ads, and you've clicked once on Facebook and once on SEO. I'm going to try and remember all of that in my head. So 3 times on Google Ads, once on Facebook, on a Facebook ad, and then once also on SEO. So if you spend $100, they're going to attribute $60, just doing the maths quickly in my head, $60 to Google Ads. They're going to attribute $20 to the Facebook ad that you clicked on, and $20 to SEO, where they actually made the purchase at the end. So that sounds great, doesn't it? But it still doesn't give you that full picture. So Google Ads might be telling you that if it's only getting 60% of the revenue, the difference between 100% and 60% is quite extreme when you're looking at things like return on investment. So we have to be very, very careful about the attribution model. And I've seen plenty of businesses over the years that have turned around to us and said, right, can we turn Google Ads off for a month and see what happens? And we say, we don't want to do that. We don't advise that, but you're the client. You get to decide. So we turn Google Ads off for a full month and all channels plummet. The whole thing falls apart. And actually, you're seeing things like organic social starts dropping, et cetera, et cetera. Another common one we see as well is when we stop running paid social ads that tend to not convert very well directly. They tend to do really well on brand awareness, telling people who you are and that you exist, etc. So we do find that the more we do that, the more the Google Ads revenue just lifts. More people are searching for your brand, finding you on Google, and Google's just going, oh look, people are coming in from Google Ads. And of course it wants to take full credit because it wants you to spend more on Google and kind of ignores the Facebook bit. So there's also that. So you see our problem with attribution. So again, the more you understand it, the more you can make educated decisions going, look, it looks like this isn't profitable, but looking at my multi-channel report, which I'll come on to in a minute, because multi-channel is dead, but there's a way you can do it, but it doesn't work as well, etc. But anyway, I'll come on to that in a second. There's so much to cover in this episode. But yeah, you've got to look at things with an open mind and go, okay, on Google Ads, I'm making like a 30% loss between my budget and my revenue right now. But looking at multi-channel and looking at other channels, I can see that the more I spend on there, the more everything else lifts. So actually, this is working. So, I mean, one thing we do with one of our clients at the moment is we work on a cost of sale basis. I say one of our clients, probably 6 or 7 clients actually work on that basis, but they say, look, our average profit per order is what, $50. So we're happy to spend maybe $20 per order from Google. And if we do that, we know we're generally making profit and we don't have to bother with any of this attribution stuff. It's too complicated, which kind of makes sense when you think about it. We have other clients that like to work on a basis of saying that, okay, whatever the total revenue of the site is, we're happy to spend 10% on Facebook, 20% or 25% on Google, and then we're going to hire an SEO agency with another 5%, and the rest is profit. And they go, okay, we've got a 15 to 20% profit margin in there, but we've got tons of channels running, and actually that can get us into the millions of dollars per month. And that's quite a smart way of doing things. But, I mean, ultimately, if we could, we would just love to know the ROAS, the return on ad spend, if we could. So, yeah, attribution is very questionable indeed. Setting it up on Shopify. Now, there's 2 ways to do this that are clear and obvious. There's a third way that I'll cover very briefly, but it's a bit annoying. So the first way you can do this is the Shopify Google app. You can install it through that. The challenge of doing that is you can't customize it at all. You literally create a GA4 account. You get your account number, your ID number for your GA4 account. It's called a web ID or measurement ID, I think it is. There's quite a few different IDs in there, so you have to get the right one. And you put that into this Google app in Shopify and it starts running. You want to customize that, you can't. So if you want, for example, when somebody signs up for a newsletter, you want a goal completion, because you know on average, every 10 people that sign up to the newsletter, we make 1 extra sale every 3 months. You know, it's really good data to have like that from your email campaigns. And you have some flows set up and everything's going to run nicely. But if you know that, you obviously want to track how many newsletter signups that you've got. The challenge is you can't really do that through just the default Shopify Google app, even though it takes 2 seconds to set that up. So be warned. The second way to do it, which is probably the most user-friendly, complicated way, so it's a more complicated way than the app, but it's more user-friendly than option 3, which I'll come on to in a sec, and that is Tag Manager. So option 2 is you set up what's called a Google Tag Manager account. The good thing about GA4 is everybody, like me making this episode today, we're all going mad about GA4 at the moment. We're all making tons of content and trying to help people out as much as we can with this content. So there are tons of guides online. We've not made one because there are so many out there at the moment. So there are loads of guides that you can go and read on how to set up GA4 on Shopify using Google Tag Manager. So you can follow a guide. If it doesn't work, it can get quite complicated. But you can then start to customize things. So you can you can send data from Tag Manager into GA4 using like a tag that says, okay, anyone that reaches this thank you page, tell GA, which you could actually do in GA4 with the normal app, but for argument's sake, say it's not a thank you page, you can still tag it and say, as soon as this says form sent or form complete or submission complete or whatever it's called in the code of the form, in using Tag Manager, you can set up a thing to ping GA4 and say, that is an event. That's an event I want to track. And then in GA4, you can also say, if anyone completes this event, that is a goal completion. It's called a conversion now. So it used to be goals in Universal Analytics. So you can now do that you've been able to do that all along in GA4. So you can set that up to get that newsletter sign up, which is a lot more complicated using the Shopify app. So you can use Tag Manager to do that. Tag Manager is basically just inserting code into the site without you inserting code into the site. So on Tag Manager, you could also set up your Facebook pixel, which lies even more than GA4. Let me be honest about that. And if we do an episode on attribution, we will talk about Facebook Pixel. And if you've got any questions, send them in. I can't guarantee I'm going to reply to those because Facebook Pixel is a bit of a nightmare. And it's very difficult to track with, and it claims revenue for everything, not just like this was just Facebook. And that's where Google and Facebook are. GA4 and Facebook are having a constant argument. on that data, which is quite a challenge. So yeah, so setting it up, you've got the Shopify app, you can do it through Tag Manager, and then option 3, which I don't recommend unless you've got web guys. Web guys can do this for you because it involves coding. You can grab the raw code out of GA4 and put it straight into your website. So you can code the actual, the theme itself, you can put stuff into the checkout to get the revenue information. That is the longest and most expensive and hardest way to set it up. But saying that, it's one of those things, the more you invest, the more you get. So if you do it that way, you can customize it so much more than using one of the systems. The other flip side of that is the two systems, they're so unlikely to break in a hurry. Whereas you might have a developer update something on your theme that breaks GA4 and everything falls apart. And bearing in mind, things like Google Ads campaigns, Facebook campaigns, they're relying on data from these tracking tools to make decisions and make you money. So as soon as you starve it of data, your revenue is going to plummet. So again, there's the risk there. We need to be really, really careful about that. Okay, point 5. We're jumping around a little bit. The reports in GA4. One thing that I used to live and breathe on Universal Analytics, and so did many of my clients, at least sort of 10, maybe 15 of my clients have said this to me in the last few months, is they used to go on GA4 and go onto like default channel grouping. And then on default channel grouping, you can just click, I just want to see the Google Organic, so my SEO traffic, and you click that, and then the graph at the top, the line chart, that changes to just the thing you're looking at. In GA4, that doesn't happen. So in GA4, that chart at the top is pretty fixed. You can edit it, but it's such a faff to change that chart at the top. So that can be a real problem. That can be a real frustration. And also, if you're on a report that has a search bar at the top of the table underneath the chart, you search for something. So you might search like CPC just to show me the source of medium with Google CPC, which we know is probably not correct. You search for that, you filter by that, but the chart at the top will still have all the different source of medium combinations in the chart. So in terms of like screenshotting something, pumping it into Word or into a PDF report you need to make or a slide deck, not so easy anymore. You have to use the Explore section to build some custom reports. I'm pretty sure it's Explore. If it's not, huge apologies. We'll write in the description what it actually is. But I'm pretty sure it's the Explore section where you can then build a custom report, which is only one step away from using Looker Studio, which is going to be my next point. So we'll go straight into that now. Is Looker Studio. It used to be called Data Studio. That is what most brands and most agencies like us use for our reporting. Looker Studio doesn't plug in with GA4 very well. There's loads of things that will just not appear. There are also combinations of stats. And apologies, I didn't get one ahead of recording this. I do apologize. But there's combinations of stats where you want to show something and it won't show you. One of the ones is we wanted to put I think it was the day of the month in one column on a table in Looker Studio. We then wanted to have on that day what products were sold. So it'd say like, this is the 30th of June today. So it'd say 30th of June, lots and lots of rows and all the products that had sold. And then we want to see how many times that product sold, how many times it's been added to cart, and how much money we've made transacting that product on that day. We wanted to do that. I don't know if it was that, but it's that kind of combination. Didn't work. We've never had that issue on Universal Analytics when it's plugged into Looker Studio and we're trying to generate a report. So yeah, big frustrations with things like that. So we are, at the moment, as an agency, we are trying to decide ourselves whether we just want to use the GA4 reporting itself or whether we want to use the Looker Studio and just show what we can show. And if the client needs any more information, we'll just pull it out manually, which, you probably will tell, I hate manual. Manual is bad for business. Manual is slow. You can create errors by copy and pasting stuff. If it's a dashboard, can't lie, it's just running. Although it can lie for all the reasons I've said already about setting it up incorrectly or the actual attribution models all telling you things that aren't quite true. So, or they are true, but they then are misinforming the decisions that you're making. So so the charts don't update and Looker Studio doesn't plug in. If you want to do a comparison, in the old analytics, and I sound like such an old person complaining about the good old days. Bearing in mind, it's the 30th of June. Today is the last day of the good old days. But we used to be able to tick a box and go, right, I want to compare this week to that week to last week, or this month to last month, or this week or month or year or whatever to the previous year. So you go, okay, we're in June right now. How was June compared to last year? We made over the last year, have we made an improvement? Yes or no? To do that, you have to set up a custom report in the Explore section, which can take 20, 30 minutes if you want to get it really, really nice. In Universal Analytics, it was probably less than 20 seconds, depending on how much data was in the report, therefore how quickly it loads. But in terms of clicking the buttons, you're talking 20, 30 seconds to get that thing set up. So some things like that, the actual reporting element is pretty manual, which, to be frank, in this day and age is quite unacceptable, Google. So if anyone from Google's listening, please phone me. I have a lot of things to tell you. So it's a bit poor. The next one then, and this one is one of the most contrasting parts of Universal versus GA4, in Universal, going back to attribution, we used to live and breathe what's called multi-channel attribution. So in Universal Analytics, it was beautifully, it's not the nicest design. It's one of the reasons they chucked in the bin is they've got an updated design and everything and the whole way it works in GA4. But it used to color code like paid search, SEO, and social. And all the other channels. And it would give you a breakdown and you could change the settings and go, okay, I want to see how often PPC starts the journey for a customer and then another channel finishes that journey. So assuming they've not changed devices, we've not lost the cookie in the process, it's all connected nicely. So assuming that's all okay, I just want to see how many journeys have started with paid search and then what the rest of the journey's been, to see how much revenue I'm not attributing to paid search because I'm using last click. But I do want to attribute some of that to PPC because PPC started that journey. Beautifully color coded, super simple to just get on the report and click go. The GA4 one is not color coded. I know it's going to sound really pedantic on the face of it. There's more than just that, but it's not color coded. So actually, when you look at it visually with your eyes, you have to really study the thing to see what all the different boxes and journeys that I'm actually looking at are. Because PPC's now split into I've completely forgotten what it's called, cross network, that's the one. So because it's called cross network for the Performance Max stuff now, and then the paid search is all your text ads and display, and display creates another one. Because they're in 3 now, they're split in the multi-channel report, which you have to go into advertising as well to see it, even though it doesn't just show advertising, it shows other stuff, like SEO, which is not, I guess it's marketing, but it's not advertising. Advertising, traditionally, in my view, is you're paying money on something to show an advert, whereas an SEO listing, by definition, is organic. It's not an advert. So it's in the advertising section, and you can go in there and start, and there's only like 2 or 3 options in there. So you can go in, I can't remember the exact name of it, apologies, but you can go in there to look at the multi-channel breakdown. But if you compare the multi-channel breakdown on GA4, it'll only ever show sort of 2, maybe 3 steps of the journey, whereas Universal, you could go all the way, like it would show you journeys where a customer been on your site like 20 or 30 times and then spent a serious amount of money, which is really important then to the multi-channel attribution. Like, we need all our channels on all the time. You know, customers are engaging with us a lot on Instagram. They're clicking through to the site a lot from Instagram as an example. We need to be doing more on Instagram. Like, that's a very simple black and white marketing decision. GA4 is not going to give you that information the same way. So go and have a play with it. That also doesn't plug into Looker Studio. So you can't show the multi-channel attribution or, okay, we've made X amount total revenue, it's called in GA4. We've made X amount total revenue direct from paid ads in some description or whatever platform you're using. And then we want to see, okay, maybe it was like 4-to-1 direct, and it was 6.5-to-1 if you include the multi-channel. So it's contributing to another 2.5-to-1 or 2.5-to-0 if you're taking the one at the first bit at the 4. So you've got 4-to-1, and then there's another 2.5 on top, which you're now missing out. Because you can't pull that information in. You couldn't actually pull the Universal Analytics information in. So what we used to do, and this is the next thing on my list, point number 8, point number 9. I've added one in. So what I see as 8, you guys are seeing as 9 or hearing as 9, which is what we used to do is we used to take the Universal Analytics and put that into Google Sheets. And then we could show a nice report, and it would automatically update itself daily. And then that Google Sheet report we would pull into Looker Studio. This is my next point. There are no official plugins to plug in GA4 to Google Sheets. Let me just repeat that, and I'll emphasize the word Google, because Google Analytics 4, so Google Analytics 4, has no plugin to bring in data from Google Analytics 4 to Google Sheets, another Google product that, let's face it, probably 5 to 10% of the entire marketing world, which is like potentially millions of us, use that function and use those sheets to make real-time live decisions all the time, and that doesn't exist. That is a problem. Google needs to pull its finger out and sort this out. This is not good. So that doesn't work, which is really frustrating. There are third-party apps, and you can use those, and some of them cost money, some of them are free. The challenge is, if you use a third-party app, that third party can steal your data. There are lots of data laws protecting your data, so they won't share it or do anything with it. But as we all know, sometimes a law is not enough. You know, there is still lots of fraud and cybersecurity and cyber fraud going on. And I'm not going too heavily into that because we're not talking about that today. But just to make the point that if you use third-party apps, just be really, really careful who you're sharing your data with. We as an agency are extremely careful because we have access to hundreds, if not thousands, of analytics profiles, Google Ads accounts, etc. So we all have 2-step authentication. We don't use third-party apps for pretty much anything unless we know the people that have made that app directly. So we have a relationship with them. We trust them. Which is few and far between. Most of these apps have been developed in any old country and any old dark bedroom around the world, and you do not want to be sharing your data with those guys. So, Point number 10, 9 on my list, 10 on your list. Some data, quite simply, doesn't pull through into Looker Studio. So I've mentioned the multi-channel doesn't pull in. I've mentioned that combinations of things don't pull in. Some things just don't exist. When you look at what are called the dimensions, so that's how you split data. So that could be like mobile devices, marketing channel, days of the week, there's always different dimensions. And then you've got dimensions and you've got metrics. Metrics are all the numbers. So how I always remember it. Dimensions you can break stuff down by. Metrics are all the numbers. And it's green for dimensions, blue for metrics. In Looker Studio, the metrics, there are loads missing. Like loads. I think nearly half when I was checking and adding it up the other day, in quite a frustrated moment, which my team found both hilarious and frustrating when I was sitting there going, that's not there, that's not there, that's not there. So we can't pull that through into the Looker Studio reports, which is really frustrating because on Universal, 99.9% of things that clients said, oh, could you add this to our report? We'd go, yeah, fine, we'll just add it right now. And it takes 2 seconds. We've added it, and now it's in there in real time. They can change the date range, change channels, and all the different functions we put on the report. They can see what's going on really quickly and make informed decisions very, very quickly. So that's been a real pain. Right, nearly at the end of my frustrations. So we're nearly there. Thanks for staying with me. Point number 10 on my list, which I think would actually be 10 now. I'm at the end of the list. UTM codes. So UTM tracking codes. If you've not used these are great because you add a little question mark and then a little equals sign at the end of your URL and put a bit of information in after that question mark. And after the question mark, you've got all this information that says like, this is the source, the medium, etc., etc. So the reason people use UTM codes is you could put a UTM code on every single Facebook post you do. Any links back to your site, add a UTM code, and you could put the same thing every time of like the source was Facebook, the medium was organic because it's a post, or you could even put post. This is Facebook, it's a Facebook post, and then you could even on something like term, you could change that every time, and maybe even put like the date. So you're like, okay, I posted on Wednesday, and then I can see in analytics all the traffic from just that one post on Wednesday. What did it do? Who came into my site? Did they bounce off? Did they spend any money, etc., etc., etc.? UTM codes, they don't flipping work. Excuse my French, but they don't work. They do not work in GA4. I'm so frustrated. They claim to, and I'm going back to that thing I was saying right at the start about source medium, that's where you'll see your UTM codes running. So we've had a bit of a problem where, for example, Universal Analytics would put a UTM code on the end of all of our Google free shopping. So we can segment that out and see what Google free shopping is doing versus Google paid or SEO and other parts of Google. And we used to split that out. And when we've looked on GA4, some of our clients have half the revenue in sessions than Universal used to on that same UTM code. This is the same thing running, just 2 tracking tools feeding off it. GA4 would have half the revenue and half the sessions on some, and others literally 0. We were on the phone with a client the other day who's getting tens of thousands of dollars per week from Google free shopping. And as of the 1st of July, I mean, this is not the case thanks to us, but as of the 1st of July, if we hadn't done anything, they would literally have no idea what that figure is. It would just probably come through like not set, which is the thing that basically says, Google Analytics basically throwing up. Not set means I don't know. Or it just puts everything like default through direct. And you're like, that's not direct revenue. That's come from Google Shopping. That's a traffic source. And I've added a UTM on my Google Shopping listings on Google Free Shopping, and it's not segmenting that. So be warned about that. There are some solutions. I'm not actually going to go into solutions today, I'm afraid, because the main one that's been working really well for us is incredibly complicated. We set it up for 2 clients so far, and it's been a bit of a head scratch and a bit of a headache. So we are working on a simpler way to do that. But again, just to be completely transparent and honest with all of you guys, we're the experts here, and it's literally, I'm just looking at the date again. I know what day it is. It's the 30th of June, sorry. I don't know what day it is. It is the 30th of June, and GA4 is coming pretty much tomorrow, and midnight tonight, Universal's turning off, and some of our clients, we won't know how that's tracking. The weirdest thing as well is that GA4 then doesn't match up to Merchant Center, and Merchant Center is the actual platform where Google Free Shopping runs from, and they don't match up. So then I'm just sitting here saying to Google, like, which one am I supposed to believe here? Which one? How do I know how much traffic's come in? And how do I know where it's come from if you're not actually accepting UTM codes? Now, Google's documentation claims that UTM codes do work just as normal and you've got nothing to worry about. It is not true. I can vouch for you, it's not true. I've checked in over 100 analytics GA4 profiles at our agency. It is not true. I'm yet to find one that is even close to adding up when I've been using UTM codes. I've even set up UTM codes, clicked through to the website myself to look at what the UTM code in the URL is and going, yeah, it's right there. And that's appeared in Universal Analytics. I can see it. But I look in GA4 and it's not there. And I'm like, I'm here right now. I've only come to this site once. And the one time I've come to this site, I've clicked on a link that's got a UTM code on it, and you're not tracking me under that UTM code. The danger of this is you could spend, I don't know, crazy amounts of money sponsoring something with banner ads all over somebody's site or an email campaign or something, use UTM codes to track how many people click on those banners or click on that email campaign, and then not know how much money you've made. It's a challenge. It's a real challenge. One of the ways we have come around this as well is the UTM codes, and this is incredibly ironic, I think. The UTM codes do get picked up quite nicely by Shopify. And we've had to make a couple of setting changes to a few Shopify stores. But how is it that Shopify are able to work with Google, again, emphasizing Google UTM codes? These weren't made up by someone one day. Like it's a Google thing. Google tell you to use UTM codes. Shopify can pick them up, but Google's own analytics tool can't, or is missing them, or as I say, the revenue's like half, and that's like the best we're getting at the moment. So it's a real problem. It's a real challenge. So those are the end of my frustrations. So you probably will sit in there going like, oh my gosh, Nick, have you just retired and quit? No, I haven't. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Overall, it is working. You can see total revenue, and if you know it's 20% out, you know what's going on. And one of the big challenges here is Google is really challenging us all to start thinking more laterally about attribution, about tracking models. Google doesn't want us just going, what have I put into Google and what have I made from Google, and that's the end of it. Google wants us now going, okay, look across the whole spectrum. And the other thing as well is most of the world right now, I don't know where you guys are based, who are tuning in. In fact, drop us an email and tell us where you are. I'd be fascinated to know where you're listening. But wherever you're based, there's a lot of what we're calling in the UK a cost of living crisis. Everything's getting more expensive. Inflation's crazy at the moment, and things are getting more pricey. So people are considering their purchases more, which means you get more multi-channel attribution going on, which makes that headache all worse. GA4 couldn't have come at a worse time. They've been rolling it out before the cost of living crisis started, but it couldn't have come at a worse time in that sense. But light is at the end of the tunnel. Google is still offering a free analytics tool, which is GA4. So everyone's got to use it, set it up, get it working. And the light at the end of the tunnel as well, and this is not just a theory of mine, this is something that Google have loosely tiptoed around as an announcement, and this is my first point about, well, what's good, what's coming. Google have said that there's been a very slow what's the word, like adoption rate to GA4. People are not using it quickly, but the more people that start using it, the more data Google's got, the more support tickets come in from people going, how do you do this, how do I do that, the more Google can create better documentation and fix the tool. There is definitely like a mass market approach to this of the more data Google can have in there, the more they can start to do stuff with it. The challenge is how many businesses are going to be really screwed over by this, and we're quite worried about what this is actually going to do to economies. Genuinely, that if marketeers don't have this data to hand now and they're working blindly, it might be fine for the first 2 or 3 months because you still know what the figures roughly were because of Universal and you can see them in Shopify. But the longer time goes on and the more you change your marketing, you evolve your marketing, or we hit peak for the first time this year with just GA4, what's going to happen to all our reports? Like that is quite a serious problem. But as I say, the more that people use it, the more that it's going to start getting better, and Google can make some more changes to it. What else is good then? There must be more, Nick. Well, there is. So I've got 4 more points. I've got 5 points in total about what's good. So more people use it, the more data Google's going to get, the better it's going to get. It is also preparing us all for something that's coming that you may not care about this, you may not have heard about this, but this is going to be quite big when it happens. December 2024. So literally as of today, we've got 6 months in a year, so 18 months, to get ourselves ready for this. Cookies are going to die in the EU. Finished forever. No more web cookies. That is what they're pushing for. They've just moved it back a year, so it was actually going to be December this year. GA4 is ready for that, apparently. So, and I say apparently, I don't trust Google very much, which is quite ironic from a guy who runs an agency that rely completely on Google for everything that we do. But Google claim that GA4 is going to be absolutely fine. So GA4, I thought it wasn't actually using cookies. I'll be completely honest and say that. I did discover that quite a few months ago that it is using cookies at the moment. It's going to continue using them whilst they're available. Once they die, GA4 is going to start using AI and machine learning to work out what has happened from your channels. So how do we split? What are people doing on the site? They can see because they see people moving around the site, but without the cookie, they won't know that this is your 4th time on the site. So it's going to use AI to decide, okay, Google knows who this user is, the fact they're searching on Google. We think that's the same user based on their current location, their buying habits, the thing they've searched for, the device they're on, the way they're clicking around the website. We think it's this person, so we think they're returning, which means that some of this revenue needs to be attributed to another channel. So whether it's going to work or not is a whole nother thing, but that's the theory, which also means actually Google is quite ahead of the game, making us do this 18 months before the cookies are going to die. Or there's been lots of jokes about cookies going in the bin because they've gone stale, like an actual cookie you can eat, which is making me quite hungry, I'll be honest. I've only just had lunch. But as I say, it's ready for the cookieless world. So that is a good point, because actually, if Google weren't doing something about this, it'd potentially be an even bigger problem and a big neglect from their side. Whether cookies do actually die or not is yet to be seen. And that's something that the governments and everybody else are working on at the moment. So we'll see what happens with that. I mentioned earlier about setting up GA4. About 2 months or 3 months ago, the Google app within Shopify, unless you managed to get hold of the beta version of it, it didn't automatically set up GA4 for you when you just put your GA4 account number in. It didn't do that. It's only just started doing that. I mean, talk about cutting it fine from Shopify. That's literally 3 or 4 months. I'm pretty sure it's 3 months, but yeah, it might have been a little bit longer. But it's not been a long time. So a lot of Shopify stores have got no data to work on, which means you can't do year-on-year comparisons. I know these are my positive things. Adding a negative spin to them, I am quite frustrated, as I said right at the start. But yeah, so point number 3 being that, yeah, the app is there now. So if you're not running GA4 and you're watching this on the 30th of June, you've got a few hours left. If you're watching it after that, you've already got some sort of data break now between Universal and GA4, but you can set it up through that app and you can do it nice and quickly. Number 4. I spoke earlier about the attribution models, so first click, last click, data driven. You can change that in GA4, which is quite nice. We often have a look at which attribution model, whether it's first click, last click, data, or time decay is another one as well, where it's like the longer that this customer is clicking on ads, or the longer between the first click and the actual purchase, the more it weights towards more recent clicks and less the previous clicks. Or position-based, it was called, where it was like, it'd be 40% for the first click, 40% for the last click. That's how they split the revenue between the two, and then 20% to all the other clicks in the middle. And that's something we've used in the past. So we've been playing about on Google Ads with doing that and changing the attribution models and see what they do. There is a thing, if you go into advertising and then model comparison, I think it's called. It actually changed its name about 6 months ago as well. I had another name before that, so go and check that out. I think it's called model comparison, but if it's not called that, when you're looking, it will have a new name. Find out what it's doing, or Google's throwing it in the bin, which it could happen. They keep changing things. But on model comparison, you can see how much more revenue you would make per channel based on the different attribution models. So you can go and check that out, which is nice. Lovely stuff. So on to my last and final point for a little conclusion that I've written, and it's not going to get emotional, don't worry. But I am sad to be losing Universal. My last point, the last good thing, the event tracking sections. An event could be like someone clicking play on a video. It could be somebody filling out a form. It could be somebody clicking on a phone number to start a phone call. Creating events has got a little bit easier, and it does create events for you. So you can see things like engaged users or first session users. There's lots of events it makes for you that you can't delete. And some of them are actually quite cool. And it's starting to, and this is part of my conclusion in a minute, we need to look at data differently. And it's starting to look at data differently and give you some different ways of doing things. And some of them are actually quite cool. And I think it's worth looking at. And also, if you have an event you're tracking that you want to turn into a goal, in the old Universal Analytics, you had to click lots of buttons and try and get it to work, and it was all a bit of a faff. Whereas, especially if you're using Tag Manager, you can quite quickly follow guides and set up a new event. And on the event itself, there's literally just a slider on the right-hand side, and just slide that, and that's now a conversion. Nice and simple. And you can pull that conversion data into like Google Ads and start targeting or telling the AI campaigns in Google Ads, I want more of that, please. So if people are subscribing to newsletter, or people are, I don't know, they might be joining the newsletter to get 10% off their first order, or they might be using your live chat to ask a question about a product, or they might be signing up to come to your next webinar or event that you're running on the website. So those things, you might want to track those as events. Somebody signing up to that is an event, and actually that is a goal completion, because we've now got their information. We can email them, we can do all the other fun marketing stuff and convince them to buy something. So that's the end of my good points. There's quite a few bad points. There's quite a few good points that are actually quite exciting. I'm going to do another episode on this in the next few months, because it's quite an evolving thing. I'm also quite keen to see what changes. As I say, Google said they're going to keep updating GA4 now that more people are going to be forced to use it as of tomorrow. So I'm quite excited to see what else happens with more people using it, new features that come out, and new systems and and it's the same with any platform, right? People work out how the platform works. They work out other things they can do with it in terms of reporting or building audiences, which you can do in GA4 as well. If you're using audiences in Universal, you need to build those in GA4 and pull those into your Google Ads campaigns. You can still access Universal Analytics and pull those audiences in they've said it's going to disappear and be deleted one day, but they've not said when. So you can still pull all that information through now, but obviously from the 1st of July, it's not going to be recording any more data. So also, final point, it's not a good or bad. Once Universal Analytics dies, in terms of page speed and cleaning up your code, you probably want to go into your Shopify store or whatever website you're on and actually remove all your Universal Analytics codes, because you just don't want extra codes running, because it slows down page loading. Google hates that on SEO, and users hate slow loading pages. Especially as most users are on mobile these days, so they're on 4G, 5G connections. They are getting better, but you want it to be as fast as possible. So that's another thing to do. So yeah, in conclusion, I mean, everybody is in the same boat. We are all dealing with this. I'm yet to meet or talk to or find anybody around the world who goes, yeah, GA4 is awesome. Like, I'm using GA4. GA4 is really, really cool. I'm yet to find somebody that's in that frame of mind yet. If you are that person, send me an email. I'd love to ask you why. I'll be polite and I'll be nice. But I'd love to ask you why and find out why you love it so much. But yeah, most people we talk to, I mean, one of our clients the other day said like, oh my gosh, if we have to look at GA4, I'm going to vomit. Another client said, oh my gosh, my eyes. And it's these kind of sarcastic jokes that it shows how people are feeling, you know. And then certainly when we ask clients like, how are you finding GA4? And they're like, what are Google doing? This is a nightmare. And so I am hoping that I wake up tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, I wake up and I check the news and it says Google has decided to delete GA4 altogether and Universal Analytics is going to keep running. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, but let's see. So brands have been quite slow to use this. So like I said earlier, my final point really is have a think about what you can do in GA4 that's a bit unique and a bit different, especially if you're in quite an old school industry, or you know your competitors and you struggle digitally with fancy campaigns. You've all got kind of technical problems on your sites. Your sites aren't very nice. There is such an opportunity for you guys at the moment to get this working well, to build better audiences than anybody else in GA4, feed them into Google Ads, and your Google Ads campaign is going to work better than other people's, because other people's going to start to be starved of data because they've not got good audience data and they've not got GA4 running properly or even at all. So yeah, it's a good opportunity to do that. So if you haven't already, cancel all your plans this weekend, set up GA4. What could be more fun than playing with Google's lovely new tool? So I've been Nick. You guys have been great. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We'll be back next week. We are starting a brand new series next week. So make sure you tune next week. If it's your first time listening, please hit the subscribe button. Leave us a little review if you've never done that. If you have, leave us another one. That'd be great. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching. Join us again next week. And yeah, thank you very much. Have a lovely weekend.